Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Welcome to Hong Kong Confidential. I'm Jules Hannaford and I'm your host. I'm an Australian woman and I've been living in Hong Kong for many years. I'm a mother, a teacher, an author, and I want to share my wisdom and the wisdom of others with you. Thanks for joining me and I hope you enjoy the show.
You meet someone online and there's this instant connection. It's amazing how much the two of you just seem to click. They live somewhere far away and there's some plausible reason they can't travel to meet you. They tell you they're in love with you and you feel optimistic for the first time in a long time. They have a successful career, yet somehow they need money from you to solve a short-term problem, always with the promise of paying you back. Time goes on and they need more money more urgently. You've started to see the cracks and begin to wonder whether they've been lying this whole time. All of a sudden it hits you. You've been scammed. Fool Me Twice is the story of my mother, Jules Hannaford, a woman who was drawn into the dangerous world of sweetheart scams. After a trip overseas to meet a stranger, a dangerous altercation in a Manchester hotel room, and thousands of pounds lost for good, she's here to tell her story. Fool Me Twice, a true crime podcast, is available on Apple Podcasts, Ozcast Network, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts.
Today I'm back here with Bess Hepworth after last week's episode where she courageously shared about her life and how it's impacted her and her family. And now today we're going to talk a little bit more in depth about her son Jude and her family here in Hong Kong. Give me a little bit of background of how you and Kirsty got together and how you ended up being mums to two lovely young boys.
It just burst my heart to think about, actually. But I met Kirst in Adelaide. Kirst was born in Hong Kong and Cathay Pacific do their training in Adelaide of all places. And so she was playing football for in between all the crazy, insane amount of training she was doing as a cadet down there. One of the ways that she de-stressed was playing football. So she was playing indoor football one night for a men's team. And Donald Campbell in South Australia talked to Kirst and said, "You're a handy footballer. Are you playing for any of the women's teams?" And she's like, "There's a women's league? What's going on?" And so he put her in touch with the Adelaide City football team, which is where I used to play and captain the Premier League down there. One night we were training and the Premier League team always trained earlier than I'm all giddy, actually. I was having to think about this for a while.
That's so cute.
Get a room. You hang up. We were playing football, right? So it was a training session. I was meant to be defending a corner and the ball was coming across. All I could see is the reserve football team. They always started after. So we started earlier and finished later. They started later and finished earlier. There was the reserve women's team were running, literally doing the warm-up laps around the back of the football goals, around the back of the field. And I went, "Ah!" Who's that? Ka-ching. But the kind of person I am, I went, "Who's that? Ka-ching." That's a one-way street, but nice to see.
I'm not good enough.
No, hell no.
Oh.
And I was having romantically what I literally describe as year of barking up the wrong tree. Romantically, it was a bit like you think you're looking at someone and making eye contact, you think they're looking back at you and that's actually the person behind you. I was like, okay, this is a shocker. At that point in my life, I was resigned to be single, possibly forever, I don't know, but I'm not the sort of person when I'm into someone, it would take me 6 months to, I smile and run away. Anyway, one cheeky way that I ended up kind of spending time with her was, I said in the earlier episode, I've got a background in coaching high performance football. I was coaching the state teams and I was coaching the Aussie youth schoolies and I was coaching club teams. And every now and then if our premier coach wasn't available, I would coach, or the reserve team, I'd coach I knew she was into like volleying the ball and striking, and sometimes we'd train together. When it was my turn to like take the training session, I totally curated it and designed it to be like, it's all volleys for an hour in front of the goals, because I know Kirst likes that. When I was coaching the state team, I needed teams that before we went away to national champs with the under-17s, I needed them to have teams to play against. So we'd play against the club teams. So she got to see me be this completely bonkers football coach that would like literally like those Wii sporting games where you're like, I'm watching my player head of the ball. I'm the one that's up in the air on the sidelines, like headering it for them. I lived and breathed it. And she'd see me like run on the field and like give a coaching note to one of the players and then run back. And for some reason, between that and redheads, this was a thing for her. So that was good.
Brilliant.
But Kirst was in the closet at the time and she was going through her cadetship at Cathay, didn't want to jeopardize it, and wasn't even out to me. And I just didn't know if she even knew she was out. And I was the most out lesbian in women's football in South Australia at the time and working for women's football. And it was all like gay in football, gay in football, gay in football in my world. That sounds so stereotypical, but just my world was that. There were these different ways that I concocted to like spend time with her. And then one night it was, so cut to like a night where it's her birthday and she invited me and a whole bunch of international footballers to go, and I lived in like a big brother house of footballers. So Adelaide City brought a few players from Denmark and Canada and Scotland, and we were this crazy, and I was like the mama Bess and the captain of the team, and I was brought in to kind of, well, it was like, yeah, this sounds like fun, but yeah, sure, I'll do this under the guise of being a captain. So we all lived in this crazy house together, and because Kirst was a foreigner, she just naturally gravitated to like us all being mates in this house. And so anyway, she invited us to her birthday and she was having a beach party down Whoopal. I rock
so
up.
Aussie. That's a long way away
And
for anyone who's not Australian.
I knew I was gone because the same night of her birthday was the club's quiz night, and it finished quite late, like about 10 o'clock at night. And her party was about an hour and a half away. And I insisted at about 11 o'clock we still go. So only one of my housemates came with me, and we rock up to, not to embarrass any pilots, but you know, they weren't on the clock, a sea of like passed out party people. And luckily Kirst was still awake, and we were helping like almost first aid a few of the boys that were totally passed out or needed a little bit of help to get to us, like a spot to rest their head. And then we ended up on the beach together and just sharing this beautiful night. And I knew I was into her, but I knew, as I said, it was a year of barking up the wrong tree. She was this extraordinary Oxford scholar pilot, like way out of my league, articulate, lovely, kind, funny, ticking all my boxes. But I was like, you ain't anywhere near this, girlfriend. But she came out to me, and then I really treasured that she trusted me with that. Being there was no way I was going to let her know that I thought she was absolutely fantastic, or that was probably obvious. I took it upon myself to be the gay liaison officer for her. And oh God, how funny that was. And so her being in the closet, even being a friend to me, and I was looking like, I don't know if I had a shaved head at the time, but I was pretty dykey looking, as they'd say. Even our friendship, to be friends with her, drew suspicion. So we started this secret friendship. But of course, in hindsight, she's like, I was super into you. That's why. Like, I took it as, I don't want to jeopardize her career, her training. And yes, there's no one in Adelaide or beyond that doesn't know that I'm a raving lesbian. So
yeah.
I was out
so you
everywhere.
Would be outing
so
her.
I kind of went, in a way, back in the closet to be her friend in her circles. Or we'd do this stuff where she'd be out at a dinner and I'd pick her up in a laneway, and like it was all like
stealth.
Like it was super, it was hot and sexy in the end. But in that period of like not telling her, we'd go to a mate's place who was going through a bit of, unfortunately, she was going through a bit of a breakup. So I was trying to be friends with her and be there for her. This was like a 20-year-old relationship. So it was like a mentor figure to me. So I'd spend a lot of time with her, and I was living sometimes at the Big Brother house and sometimes staying with her. So then Kirst and I would like catch up there as friends. And then one day I invited her around, and we, under the guise she was into dogs, and my friend had a dog, and I don't know, I'm a cat person, but yeah, let's take this dog for a walk. And we end up in this situation where the couple that had broken up were having a fight in their house, and we were watching the dog. in the bathroom. So we got locked in the bath. It's just horrible, awful trauma that these poor women were going through. But it also gave us a bit of a weird time to bond. Anyway, so we just kind of got into this like groove. I'm not going to say anything. She thought I was giving her mixed signals. In hindsight, I was just like, I don't want to mess up this friendship. This went on for a couple of weeks. Cutting a long story short, one day I invited her around to my friend's place to like stupidly like gay movies, not thinking about the impact of that is super awkward when there's a sex scene. I swear to God, I was doing it under the like your cultural liaison. Like I'm gonna show you these amazing movies. Yeah. Oh, this is super awkward watching this. I don't think my friend was there. I think she was away for the weekend, and I think so. Kirst stayed over, and I remember I went into one of the kids' bedrooms to crash. At the end of the night, it's that moment where you're like agonizing, but I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to go into bed and I'm going to leave her on the couch. I think we had football the next day. So maybe it was a Saturday night and Sunday was football. There's this moment where I'm laying there and I'm like recapping going, oh my God, I am so gone. This woman is extraordinary. I can't even be in her presence. I'm dying. My heart's going ga-gung, 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 ga-gung. And then I hear the door go, and I'm thinking, oh my God, could it be? It was the dog. And then I'm like, right, Hepworth, sort it out. This is a no-go zone. Like not happening. Sort this out. Like if something happened, it would have happened by now. Anyway, the following week, like we're at football and again, her team started earlier. Mine finished later. I am so embarrassed about all of this and I'm just like, can't deal. And I had to return the videos that we'd borrowed because it was videos back then. So I go to leave the training session and like Kirst must have hung around and I think she was hanging around for me. Oh, I forgot a bit of the story. We cut to this moment where Kirst comes around like just before football training. We're going to go to training together. She's finished her cadets stuff for the day, comes to our house and there was just insane tension. We're like super sporty, getting ready to go in our cars to go to football training. And we just had this moment where we both see each other, we lock eyes and we like almost run. I'm not even kidding you. We like fast walk towards each other and go, right, that's it. So we go to have this spectacular kiss. In our minds, we headbutt because we're both wearing baseball caps. And then I'm like, okay, I had, super orcs. I'm like, I had one job, I've blown it, I'm done. All the expletives. So I go to training, she goes to training. I'm like, she's not coming back up. Like we'd arranged for her to come back after, right? Well, that's done and I'm just furious. I'm training, the worst training ever.
So you didn't have the snog? Didn't have the
snog because we hit bloody caps. We headbutted each other. And so I'm like, I'm done. I can't believe I blew it. The one chance, I'm done. I've lost her. Anyway, cut to training's over, thank God. I just want to get home and get the hell out of this situation. And I thought she had gone. I hadn't even thought that she was there. And I'm driving in the car and I'm a few blocks away from, we were in the city because it was Adelaide City, a few blocks from the training ground. And my eye catches this cute chick in a car. And it was just that, whoa. And then I went, oh my God, that's Kirst. And she was waiting for me to finish training. And I'm like, oh my God. And then I'm like, oh, it's still alive. The dream is still alive. And then I drove in the wrong direction. She's winding her window down going, what are you doing? Like, and I'm like, oh. And then that night, like we hung out in the lounge room of my friend's place who was away again. And I just hugged her and I didn't dare kiss her. I was so scared.
Oh, that's so sweet.
But anyway, so there was 6 months of her being in Adelaide. And then the thing is, she lived in Hong Kong and I was at country like you, although you're far more worldly, but I
was a country bumpkin as well.
So country bumpkin's like, okay, how's this going to play out? Like she's going to have to move to Hong Kong. So I saw this as like, she hates me describing it like this, but a stepping stone to her gay life. Like we'll have this lovely relationship, but I never foresee, like my heart was on my sleeve. I was absolutely gone, but I didn't ever see that it was going to last. I don't mind getting insanely hurt because being with her is amazing and I'll just cop it. But then cut to 6 months later and she's saying goodbye and heart absolutely distraught. And she's like, I'm going to call you. I'm going to see you. And Kirst was born in Hong Kong, spent a lot of time going back and forth between the UK because she grew up here till she was 5 and then parents split up and so she lived in the UK. but she'd come back and forth. So she thought nothing of like travel, right?
Whereas for us little country bumpkins, it's
Oh
like,
my
what?
God,
We haven't even been to Bali.
Yeah. If not for like one football trip to Malaysia at the time, I hadn't been anywhere. And so, but I used to have this ritual that when she would come to visit, it was the first time that I did it when she was saying goodbye. It was so ridiculously traumatic, and we had a big rainbow flag. My mates were with me as we said goodbye. We called her Pilot Pie because there were too many Kirstys on the football field, so they called her Pilot and shortened it to Pie. So now she's Mummy Pie to our kids.
Oh, how cute. That's so cute.
But in the madness of all of this and in the utter heartache and never thinking I'm going to see her again, we have this rainbow flag and we're like, kind of cool. We had a rainbow flag and she sees it from the air. And then I get this idea, okay, I need to be in the plane spotting area because that's where she might be. So I end up like racing, getting in my car, my mates, and we go to the plane spotting area. And I stand up on my car, doors open, hazard lights on, like such a ridiculous, cheesy gesture, right? This is how you know you're gone. And she never saw it.
Brilliant.
But I did that 4 or 5 more times in the times that she visited. She never saw. But
that's hilarious.
But also being in a distance relationship is painstaking, but it's a beautiful way to solidify your commitment and to fall in love. We used to run baths together at the same time and put Damien Rice and Coldplay on. And
all right, so you'd have dates from afar together. That's lovely. And did you move to Hong Kong to be with her?
I totally did. And at the time I was pursuing a football career and I was being groomed to be an Olympic football coach. That was kind of where I was heading, and I was coaching at the Institute of Sport in Adelaide, and we were doing the decentralised program for the Athens team. And that was where I saw myself, and I talked to my coaches and they're like, right, let's make this happen. There's not a lot of women coaches. Like, you're coaching the under 19 Aussie schoolies. This is a thing. Let's do it. But when I met her, it all unraveled pretty fast. And I tried to pursue coaching for a while, but then it just got to the point where Kirst and I didn't want to be separated. And I was taking the scenic in education. So I was doing my university. And we just got to this point where we'd see each other, but we didn't have a future mapped out. But what we described it as, and I've advised others that are in this situation, is we just loved it out. We're just like, look, we know how we feel about each other. Thank God it was mutual.
Yeah, and it will unfold and work out.
Yeah, don't get stressed out about it. We need it. At the time I said we needed a football field. We'll work it out. Like, let's just love it out. And then I realized we were cut to one of these times that I was at the airport in Hong Kong going back, and we're just like, oh, can we do this? This is killing us. This is just crazy. And she and I just kind of brainstormed, like, got this left of uni. And then we went, hang on, what if I could do some of that remotely? So I went back, contacted them, and then apart from my practical, I could do it remotely. So I didn't even pack up. I had to finish. I was going to New Zealand with the Aussies. We had a tour that I was assistant coaching with. And then I didn't even pack up the house. My dad packed up my house for me. I got on a plane and I just went.
How long have you been here now in Hong Kong?
14 years now.
Wow, okay.
So 13 or 14 years.
And did you guys get married?
We did.
Where?
In Adelaide in 2006. We ended up not being married officially under the eyes of the law,
ceremony,
of course.
yes.
But it counted to us. And we had 2 amazing friends who were nuns, lesbian nuns, that married us.
Oh, how fab.
And they were fantastic. And we picked somewhere that the brief that I got when I was choosing somewhere is we need somewhere that's like 4 weddings and a funeral without the funeral meets Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. So we found this really cool homestead English place that had a Brit flag and an Aussie flag. Had the gum trees, but it was like a British homestead. And then I came from the west and she came from the east, and we had a beautiful, and I mean, one of the things that you take from when it's not so prescribed to choose your ceremony, if you can squeeze the life out of the perks of it, is you're not bound by tradition. And I think this has also inspired like heterosexual couples, right? But we literally got to design the most special, beautiful ceremony that we possibly could. We had a mate, shout out to Susie, who designed the rings, painted the sign and sang the songs. Like, we totally exploded her friendship. But it was a beautiful day and it counted to us. And then cut to, I think it was 2009. I think Elton and David got civil partnered in 2008. I think in 2009, we did the same on the same day in the UK,
right?
December 1st. So
you've been married twice.
Yeah. And in a weird way, we were a hat trick, because then in a kind of anticlimactic way, when the Aussies finally declared marriage, and I think it was December, that sometime early December, all these couples who'd been civil partnered just woke up married. So we still think there might be a third ceremony in us, getting closer to our 20 years. And because of Jude, we'd kind of like to be able to do a sign, like it'd be tactile sign, because I don't know if he'll have his sight by then, but do tactile sign language and build in the kids to it. And
how lovely.
hopefully, I don't know. It's if I keep behaving myself.
Well,
my activism is
I was
always
say, if you stop working so hard, you can plan your third
wedding. I want
wedding.
to keep a ring on my finger.
How did you decide to become mothers?
It's funny, actually. There's some couples that kind of think about these things systematically and kind of carefully broach it. It was instant. Just one of those things that was a natural, even on probably an early, within weeks of just talking about not necessarily U-Haul, like we're moving in together, but literally like sharing what our hopes and desires were and just finding that we were on the same page. And even getting married, we didn't actually propose. We sent the invites out before we were like, hang on a minute.
We're doing this wrong way around.
We haven't even got engaged. And then we sprung proposals on each other. So
that's brilliant.
In terms of that, it was kind of, we knew that we wanted to, but we didn't know how. Although for me in Adelaide, the model I'd seen lesbian couples is find a gay friend and maybe who was in a gay relationship, and he kind of part-time parenting and the turkey baster model, as we call it, right?
Yeah.
So I just assumed that was what we would do. But in Hong Kong, that played out very differently. And I kind of say we spent a few years searching, having different conversations with gay men, some straight men, some old uni friends of Kirst and other like sporting community members. And then we were like, oh my God, we're happily married looking for a man. What are we doing? And around that time, we hadn't entertained the idea of going through like sperm banks and having a donor that way. But we met a lesbian couple that had moved to Hong Kong, and it just fell into place that they were like, just go sort yourselves out. You've spent a couple of years, you're not getting any younger. Like, why don't you pursue this? And they had a positive story. So we researched and we found a clinic in San Francisco that was lesbian owned. And at the time, Kirst was doing long hauls to San Fran. So what we thought in our naivety is that
she'll just get up the duff while she's
my
there.
ovulation. Well, I went first because I was older and had the more, like, I wasn't exactly the breadwinner of the family in the same way. So we decided for me to go first. But honestly, we were so clueless. We've advised so many couples since then. We were utterly clueless. I would literally pee on a stick, right? Those ovulation sticks. And then I'd jump on a plane and Kirst could be in the air not having finished her like flight. And I'd leave her this mad message. She would land just as I'm like waiting to like board a plane and go, honey, I need to go to San Fran. And then like we told our mate, like this couple, and they're like, what are you doing? Like, you can get your eggs scanned, don't you, by the doctors? And I'm like, what? So the ovulation stick thing wasn't exactly the most accurate. So we did this going to San Fran for a few tries. But actually what we ended up doing is being able to cryovac, like freeze the sperm and bring it to Thailand, which pre the coup, because it's got a whole lot more trickier. So even within our rainbow family privilege, we have been so lucky because Thailand have since shut down because of the Gammy case, which was, I don't know if everyone's familiar. It was a guy and his wife, and he found out to have a background in criminal record in being a pedophile, and that all the due diligence that clinics do, right? I mean, they didn't do due diligence with us. We rocked up with passports of friends to say they were our husband. They didn't need to see a document produced. So that's no longer available, but we were so lucky that at the time it was. So we both took it in turns. But so I gave birth to Flinny and Kirst gave birth to Jude, and we used a clinic in Thailand. So we kind of call it international baby making.
Great.
San Fran donor, Thai insemination, Hong Kong Queen Mary babies.
Brilliant. When did you realise that something was up with Jude?
So
Jude, your second, so everything was fine with Flinny.
So Flinny's good, just a cheeky larrikin because he's like, we've got doppelgangers. But Jude, 4 months in, we had some friends, 2 different sets of friends were visiting, one from actually San Fran and friends from Denmark. And we had all kids around the same age. So we stuck the babies on the ground. And there was just those kind of games where you peripherally like dangle stuff behind the baby's rattles behind their ears. And we noticed that Jude wasn't reacting the same way. And then it triggered us to remember that when he was born and Kirst was in hospital, that they said he failed his hearing test. But we talked to some other mates and they're like, don't worry, bit of guck in the ears. She'll be right, mate. You know, they get a bit excited. Don't worry about it. But it was that 4-month moment where we're like, maybe there's something wrong with one ear. We were absolutely gobsmacked when we did a test, like almost straight away after that. We're like, oh yeah, okay, ka-ching, this is coming back to us now. There might be something that we should have done. And we went and got some tests and the test came back, quote unquote, your son has profound hearing loss. The Aussies would call that like kind of cheekily deaf as a post, like no hearing whatsoever. And that was like, oh my God. It wasn't like pity or devastation. It was like, how the hell did he keep that from us? Like, smart little bugger. But the thing that was the trickiest part is the advice we got, which was come back in 6 months' time. That's what we were told. And then I guess here's where nepotism plays a role. My sister's a pediatric surgeon. And so I called her immediately and she's like, what? They told you Hong Kong's good at lots of things and I'm sure it's evolving, but early intervention, it's not its forte, right? So I called my sister and she's just like, get down here. She was in Melbourne at the time. She's like, I'll set up some stuff for you. Here's who you need to contact. And she, bless her, she kind of took control and just said, look, this is what you do. Contact these guys, do that. And then because, you know, we are lucky to have the travel privilege, I could like get on standby and go down. So there went almost a year of doing tests. And like you make a choice if you find out that your child's deaf. One is that you don't act on it at all. And this has been historically a little controversial that you intervene. And the deaf and hard of hearing community have been divided on that. Some are very staunch, like, you know, this is how it's meant to be. Don't do that. And so that's something that we had to grapple with. And I think the test that we were doing, we had time to think about it. And I think in hindsight, it's just as well because we didn't know the other things we were going to find out. And also being in Hong Kong.
It's just as well. What did you decide to do?
Well, so we decided to do the cochlear implants, which is like a bilateral cochlear implants where they recreate hearing by going in, but they have to destroy the current pathways, like audio pathways, so auditory, like nerve system. And that's a no-go, like there's no going back once you do that. So you've got an almost 1-year-old, you're trying to find out if they can tell you if they're deaf or not. It's really hard. But what in hindsight we didn't know at the time is that Jude had a degenerative eye condition. We didn't know that then. So the tests that they were doing were like, follow this bunny running across a screen. Now, I don't think he even saw it, to be honest. Like so much makes sense going back and going, you couldn't see that properly, right? But we didn't know that at the times. If we'd known that he was going to be blind in his future as well, it would have made the cochlear decision a little bit more clear cut because we could give him other options. But we decided to make the call because we're in Hong Kong. It's a noisy city. We didn't have sign language. Like we just thought, well, you know, there's more evidence that this is something that's becoming a little bit more accepted in the community. And so
would you not have done it if you realised he was going to be losing his sight?
There's a grapple about if you're being selfish and the decision that you're making on behalf of your kid. But instinctively, that's the decision we wanted to make. But it's such a difficult one for parents to grapple with around intervening on behalf of your child. It's a little bit different to other medical conditions, but it's still a big intervention, right? But he had the cochlears and they do the operation. It was all successful just before his first birthday in Melbourne. And then he was switched on about a fortnight later. And we've got this video that's like a YouTube moment where he literally just his eyes light up and he's just like looking at us and my dad's in the room and Kirst's mum's in the room and we're all like saying hello. And it was that moment that validated, okay, I think we've made the right decision because we're not traumatizing him. And they've just fit like a glove. So for us, it's been a really positive experience. And we thought, done and dusted, we're good to go. We were spending 6 months in Melbourne to do all the training because a lot of it is about learning how to use the technology, but also when kids switched on and Jude was 1, he's had a year of not hearing, right? So he doesn't know what sounds are. He doesn't know how to speak. He doesn't know, like, so you literally go through this intensive speech therapy and learning what's the best way to get the best out of him. And it's all play-based, which is the best bit. Like, he loved it, you know, like he genuinely, people are his toys. So he loved it. But again, unbeknownst to us, we go back to Hong Kong 6 months later. We're good to go. We're on our balcony and there's a helicopter going over. And my helicopter was one of the things that they used, like, to make a sound, chup, 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 chup. So we'd see a helicopter in the sky and we'd go, Juju, chup, 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 chup. And we'd get him to try to look up at the helicopter. And we're like, you can't see that. You're doing a kind of, oh, yes, dear, kind of a, yeah, sure, I can see that, trying to trick us. And then we're like, okay, hang on a minute. And then we did a few other kind of just totally uneducated tests around, I don't think he can see that. Maybe he's going to need glasses, they say naively, right? So then we get some eye tests done. And then the reaction when we had the eye test done at the sanatorium hospital in Hong Kong, the woman that was doing the tests, she wasn't poker face. She was like, oh, shit, you know, and she'd never seen, and now like, no one's ever seen what genetically is going on with Jude. And so we thought that we were dealing with two things then, right? So then we're like, okay, right, that's a bit of a sucker punch, but we're resilient. We're going to do whatever we can. We don't know what's going on. There may be a cure. So then we go down the route of all these eye tests, but we keep, and genetic testing around the world. And it kept coming back that they didn't know what was going on. And we went back to Melbourne and we did some tests there. And they're like, he has a degenerative eye condition. It's a little bit like macular degeneration that some folks that are elderly have. But his form of macular is depigmentation is incurable. But they've never seen this combination before.
What do you mean with the ears and the eyes?
With the ears and the eyes, there are like different diagnoses that, like, there's Usher's syndrome and some other syndromes, but whatever like intricate things were going on with Gigi, they hadn't seen before.
Does it have a name, what he's dealing with?
No.
Wow.
It doesn't have a name. So it's an unnamed thing.
So they must be super interested in studying him.
Oh my gosh, they are rubbing their hands together. But then cut to, you know, he's moving around, he's super active, very bright, super switched on kid, loving the ears, doing really well. The sight, a bit problematic from it, but not too bad. But when we go to feed him, he can't sit still and he's moving around the house. And we literally would spoon feed him. He'd get down off his chair, burn around the house, go up and down the hallway, almost do it like literally
he's super
lap,
high energy, isn't he?
and then give him another. And then we're like, okay, I think we need to go see someone about this. And then he's diagnosed with sensory processing disorder. And we're like, oh, that makes sense. So basically he's sensory seeking. No wonder, right? His senses are out of whack. All of the senses, like the messages in his brain are telling him that he hasn't moved. So he constantly has to move. He constantly needs stimulus and touch. And we've got crash mats. We've got a really fun lounge room. We've got crash mats and swings, and we call our kids the bear cubs for a reason. And luckily Flinny's in on all this rough and tumble, but he actually needs that to a point of regulation. It was all like sucker punch, right? We didn't get it all at once. First we find out that he's deaf. Then we find out about the eye condition that's incurable. And then we find out about the sensory processing. We're like, well, at least we can do something about that. And it's tricky. And that actually probably one of the hardest things. But then cut to another few months later and we're like, yeah, he's a little bit slow with speech. That's understandable. You kind of clock it down to the cochlear piece, and kids that are switched on, they naturally have a bit more delay because they've got so much to catch up on. And we find out through the ear test that he's caught up on all his hearing, but yet he's not speaking. So then we see a therapist about that, and they discover that he has this thing called oral dyspraxia, which means the muscles in his jaw, like his tongue and his jaw and all the muscles, they're just like totally a jumbled puzzle, and they can't.
So they're out of whack.
Totally out of whack.
And he can't make it work.
But in terms of his intelligence, he is so switched on. There's nothing in terms of.
I've seen him. He's
people
amazing.
assume he's autistic, but he's not. He's the happiest. Like, we are lucky we're not dealing with autism, because for those parents that are out there, I feel like we got off lucky. You know, like
really,
we got
that's
off
interesting
lightly.
Considering there's so many layers.
Yeah, there's so many layers.
But he's a super happy child, isn't he?
He is extraordinary. He's a gift. And like you were saying before to me, he's a gift to remind me of like balance. He's a gift in our family to nurture ourselves a bit. And you meet him and you're not feeling sorry for him.
Definitely agree.
he's-
Yeah. And everyone's drawn to him.
He's
like
got a
the
thing.
kids are drawn to him. There's something about him that just
he's come to your school, right? During LA week.
and the kids were just so drawn to him.
There's something pretty cool about him.
Yeah.
So, and Kirst gave birth to him, so I'm not being like genetically biased about that. But just being in his presence, and now he's got the cane and he is losing his sight quite rapidly. And, yes, there are days where we need to go, you know what? This sucks. But the biggest thing that sucks is how to keep him regulated, because it means he's on 90-minute sleep cycles. So he'll wake up at night and then just, he's got the cochlears off at night because the batteries are recharging and he doesn't want to sleep with them on. But he's in a dark room. He's literally blind at that point because he can't see anything. He can't hear, and he can speak a little bit, but very like the start of a word or the end of a word. But he's a very assertive kid. There's make no bones about it.
So
But
you
he
upload
can't-
in the middle of the night with him.
which is also why I end up tweeting at silly hours or responding to an
Yeah.
email, because I'm sitting in his bedroom.
And why are you
patting
feeling
him,
a bit down sometimes? That's
there's that.
it's a real pressure just to
Yeah.
keep waking up.
Oh, yeah, sleep. And so I kind of take naps in the morning and then like pick up again. But in terms of everything going on with him, we don't know how to deal with all of it. But we've got an extraordinary team in Hong Kong and an extraordinary team in Australia. Then we go back and forth as a family about every 6 to 8 weeks to Adelaide. And next year he's going to go to school at the SA Vision Impaired School, which is just an amazing school. And it breaks our heart that we need to leave, because the disability space in Hong Kong is honestly,
It's lacking.
I may
It's
be an
lacking.
LGBTIQ activist, but there's part of me that thinks I should be devoting all my time to disability, because people are ostracized, the medical model, adults are just, we don't see people visually, you don't see people with disabilities in the street because
There's no access.
shame, there's no
Yeah.
access. Yeah,
Yeah.
MTR, Teresa Go, the Singapore, shout out to her, the Paralympic athlete.
Yeah, she was telling me they had to carry her into nightclubs.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Everywhere she went.
Yeah, or even
She had to have a team lift her up and down to,
our
just
team,
go out.
Yeah, exactly. So you tell her that they dropped her down the stairs.
Well, they shouldn't have been drinking so much.
I don't think
She's
it helped
great.
that
I
she
really
was
want Teresa to
drinking
come
as
back to
well.
Hong Kong so I can
She
interview
will
her.
in November,
Yeah.
but
Oh, great.
for Miles of Love. But with her, she always says that it's not the disability that disables you, it's the environment. And I mean, I heard a story about when the Beijing Olympics were happening, Hong Kong had the equestrian events. And around that, to satisfy the IOC guidelines, they needed to make sure they had accessibility boxes ticked, But then they dismantled the different ramps that were around the, it's
I know, it's ridiculous.
this is what we're
isn't it?
dealing with. And
Yeah.
I've heard some locals
It's
say,
so short-sighted.
and it's a thing where they go, it's a small part of the population. We don't need to draw a lot of attention to it. But the amount of stigma around it. I mean, I've recently met some extraordinary activists that are doing this work. And Jude goes to the Child Development Centre. We can't mainstream him because no mainstream school will have the support, and they expect the parents to pay for that to come in. So you just
you
can't.
have to have one-on-one support.
But they're incredible, and they cater to him. And because the thing is, you can underestimate a kid's human potential, right? And sometimes we're guilty of doing it. And then he's listening into a conversation we're talking about, we got to go and get we got to go do some shopping. And the next minute he's shoved a shoe on your foot. He knows exactly what's going on, but he's a modern day Helen Keller. He's trapped at the moment, but we know that with intense therapy and with an incredible group, and his will is extraordinary. He's such a stubborn bugger. I'm so excited to see him
flourish.
backpack around Everest, because he's that, I had to give up my Olympic football coaching dreams, but there's
now you can relive it in your kid.
Paralympic one growing, I'm not going to lie. There's a
And
tiny
he probably will make
one.
it.
I
Does he
reckon
get
might.
frustrated sometimes? Does he know that he's different?
I think he was always clued in. We didn't catch up. But I think it plays out in the night. That's what I think's going on. I think it's subconscious. That's what's going on. And our Yaya Grace is, oh my gosh, she deserves a medal every day of her life. Her kids and our kids may as well be related. She's extraordinary. And I couldn't be the activist I am traveling around the world doing what I do without having her there and looking after Jude and, Flinny.
Yeah. So for people out there who are not in Hong Kong, Bess is talking about her helper. We are very privileged here that we're able to have wonderful people helping us in our family.
Absolutely.
So now you've made the decision to move back to Australia because to get Jude the support that he needs.
Yeah, and also from the schooling perspective, when he gets to be 6 or 7, the pathway's narrow and he kind of just given vocation and laborious educational pathways. And where we are in Adelaide, they're like, if he ends up wanting to do the international baccalaureate, we'll print the brow sheets. We'll work with the school. We can do bridge.
Incredible.
We can do whatever, right? And there's blind cricket.
No choice,
and
is there?
It's a total no-brainer. So Kirst and I end up in distance again, but we've been together. This is it, hopefully, for us. And if she doesn't find a non-activist, that's a whole lot easier to love. But
she won't. She would have done it ages ago if she was going to.
Yeah, I think I'd keep her entertained.
Could she get reposted to Adelaide? Because I know they've got Cathay there.
Yeah, the bases are tough. So at the moment, we need to do the commuting. But again, it wasn't even a blink. We know exactly what we need to do. And we've got 2 homes, and we have for a couple of years, we've had our Adelaide home and we've had our Hong Kong home, which sounds ridiculously privileged, but we've kind of needed to do that out of necessity. It was never in the plan to do that. And now we flip it where we're going to spend more time in Adelaide. And then in the holidays, I'll be here with the kids, handballing them as fast as possible to anybody that will take them so I can do some events.
Yeah.
Spoken like Mother of the Year. But
that's brilliant. So what are your takeaways from this experience with Jude? What has it taught you about yourself and him?
I think going back to conversations around trauma and resilience, I think when I ran a TEDx a few years ago and it was Viktor Frankl inspired and it was called Radical Resilience, it's something I cling to. They say that, you're never given more than you can handle, right? And I think some people have been very kind to us. Maybe we should actually say, you know what, we're doing okay with this, because I have seen some parents really struggle. So I think the fact that I've got a background in human rights and a little bit of trauma mixed together means my attitude to him is not pity. And meeting people like Teresa and knowing, being clued into the world about people that not being ableist, and knowing that it's not that, and we say this to Flinny, is it's not that you can't do something. It's just we need to find a different way to help him do it.
Beautiful.
And I think it's making sure that it's different, but it doesn't mean it's debilitating. And we've got to get really, really creative. And again, I'm thankful to fall back on 8 years of running a team building company because I'm drawing on that. I think it almost feels like fate that we've got him. And I also think one day I'm going to have to park all the stuff I'm doing aside to just give him and Flinny the platforms they need, but they're pretty incredible kids. And
they are.
Been given a unique exposure to they've got a mum who flies a 777. That's cool. Then they've got this other crazy mum that drags them around the place and
saves the world.
Well, having a crack at it with people that, that want to do that. I mean, we were in London for London Pride and Kirst was working, so she wasn't there, but we marched with the Mardi Gras team who are bidding for World Pride 23, and it was unbelievable. And Jude, I don't know if I showed you the video of him, but he was a media whore. He was running down the roads in London while Pride was on. He wanted to tap and meet every single person. And the footage of him with Shannon Power, that who's the great journalist, she's holding his hand and he's running, almost like he's a cricketer trying to get to the crease, and squealing with delight. And I think they're those moments that you go, you know what? All of this is coming together. And our LGBTIQ community have some intersectional ally issues to cope with, and creating visibility and space and opportunities to own those conversations. So I'd like to think I was someone that was always going to challenge myself to do that. But it's frontal cortex now, and our website and our social media posts, we make sure that we work with an expert in Sydney who tells us if they're accessible before we post, and making our website, it doesn't have a revolving slides for that reason, and learning more about how you can be an ally. And this is my whole thing with Planet Ally is, allyship is not just about someone who self-identifies as a straight person being an ally to the gay community. We have to all be intersectional allies to each other. We in Hong Kong need to be the best allies to the migrant worker community, and then bring that into our community, the trans migrant workers or the lesbian migrant workers, right?
And the disability community.
Exactly.
Yeah, everything.
Which really needs some love, I'm not going to lie. So, and then in terms of Kirst and I, you know, some marriages break up over this. So I'm not saying it hasn't been difficult, but that's never been, you know, we just need to be on the same page together. And I think his attitude to this, and Flinny's amazing. He doesn't give him a second sympathy. It's brilliant, you know, like, and the other day Flinny was playing with the tape measure down the hallway, and I said, Flinny, you got to be careful. You could blind someone. You could blind your brother. And he just goes, but he's already blind. I'm like, you know what?
Oh my God, that's beautiful.
You're not wrong. You kind of got a point there.
And you know what? That is a great reminder for us all to keep our sense of humour.
Oh my gosh, totally.
And amongst all of the difficulties that many of us face out there, we've got to keep our sense of humour.
Yeah.
Bess, thank you so much for joining me today for this epic marathon. I know you're going to be exhausted.
No,
for my listeners out there, I'm starting a section on my Patreon page for Hong Kong Confidential.
Awesome.
So you can just go to www.patreon.com/Hong Kong Confidential. And I'm going to ask Bess 4 questions. She's going to pick 4 numbers from 1 to 50 in the hot seat. And then you're going to answer these questions, and I'm putting them on Patreon. So people have to join Patreon if they want to hear your 4 questions.
Okay.
So we're going to sign off now and say thank you so much, Bess, for sharing your amazing story and giving us so much insight into so many topics. It would take me an hour to recap them all now. And it's just been an absolute honour and a pleasure, and I feel really moved by everything.
Thank you. Well, there's been tears today and last week.
It's just been really wonderful. And thank you for trusting me to share this really, really moving story with me.
And I do, mate. And thank you for all the space you hold and the healing that you do. You may call yourself the couch psychologist, but you open up spaces and really set other people on a journey. And I just hope that my well-intentioned madness and stories shared are useful for people on their journey of allyship or trauma or lived experience. It's been an honour to be asked.
Oh, thank you. And thanks for saying all of that. And it really is just one of the most amazing things I've ever done in my life, doing podcasting. And it's just so inspirational. And I hope it's helping others. So goodbye to my listeners. Please share this and the previous podcast with others. And if you can rate and review me on iTunes, that would be amazing. And go to Patreon if you want to hear the answers to Bess's 4 questions.
And come here. I'm going to hug you so hard right now.
See you later.
Bye, everybody.
Hi, Confidants. I want to tell you about my Patreon page. I've joined Patreon in the hope of getting sponsorship for my Hong Kong Confidential podcast. Patreon is a great way for my listeners to get on board and sponsor me with monthly payments, and that goes towards my production costs and rewards for my members. If you're interested in checking out my Patreon page, please go to patreon.com and search up Jules Hannaford or Hong Kong Confidential. I would really appreciate you visiting my page. So that brings us to the end of another Hong Kong Confidential podcast. I'm Jules Hannaford. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you'll be with me again next week. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please can you go to iTunes to rate and review it. I would really appreciate your feedback. You can email me at jules@hongkongconfidential.net, and you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Hong Kong Confidential. If you'd like to hit me up on Twitter, it's at Jules Hannaford. I would love to hear from you.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.